Hey everyone, this is Borrowing Tape. I'm Nase DeSanders and I am here with Ivan Kavanagh, the director of the horror thriller Son. Son is a story of a mother with an abusive past who goes to desperate lengths to protect her son from the various forms of evil after him. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us, Ivan.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
So let's jump in. Where did you get the idea for this story?
Well, the idea started when my first son was born about 5 years ago. And he had a very, very difficult birth. And we were very worried about him for a few months. And we had a lot of sleepless nights. But I saw during that time how close my wife and son were growing, that mother-son bond. And it was very, very strong. And then as a writer, I started to think, well, how far would a mother go to protect that son she loves? What wouldn't she do to protect him? Is there anything that she wouldn't do? And that got me started on the writing. So during those sleepless nights of the baby crying and in between feeding him, and I started to jot down ideas for the script. So that's how it came into me.
That's great. So there are some very tastefully handled sexual themes in this film. Could you tell us a bit about your approach to introducing these themes to the story?
Well, with horror films, you can explore very difficult themes through genre, So what seems like a genre element can carry you through these very difficult themes, And horror has always been like that. You can really deal with these in a very abstract way, which is why I love horror films so much. It gives you so much leeway. There is no subject you can't tackle, or no subject too big or small you cannot tackle with a horror film, I think. Yeah. Because it's so abstract, because you can really push boundaries, and because the message of horror films is sometimes so subtle, it just creeps in throughout it, And this film, I mean, on the page, it seems to be about demons and devils, but the real evil in this story are the people and what they've done,
Yes, absolutely. Cool. So motherhood could be considered a subgenre of horror at this point. What special sauce does Son bring to this subgenre?
What special what?
Special sauce. What's new about this subgenre in Son?
I don't know. I mean, well, in Son, it came, as I said, it came from a very personal place. So for me, that was the only reason. I didn't, when I was writing it, I didn't think I want to make a film of this subgenre. I'm not sure I was even aware of them, Mm-hmm. For me, it just came from that very organic, very personal place,
That's wonderful.
And I suppose when you think about it, you have Rosemary's Baby, you have I can't think of any others, but I'm sure there's 1,000 of them. Mm. But you're right, yeah, it is a good subgenre. I suppose because the bond is so close.
Yeah.
I think what makes this different, though, is that perhaps the son is the threat in this, Mm. It's usually about a mother trying to protect the son, and it still is about that, but the son may be the bad guy in this film, but we just don't know,
Yeah. So when casting a mother and son as central protagonists, what kind of work goes into creating that warmth or chemistry between the actors?
Casting is most of the work of a director, I mean, casting is the most important part of the film, So I usually spend a long time casting. Andi Matichek, I had seen her in the Halloween film. I thought she was great. And then when I met her, I usually go on instinct rather than auditions or anything like that. And once I talked to her, I knew she was perfect for the part. And then the hunt was on to find the right boy. And I didn't want a typical movie kid. I wanted a kid that seemed like a real child,
Yeah.
And so we did auditions for about 400 or 500 kids.
Wow.
And it was really late in the process. I think we were only 2 weeks from shooting when we found Luke. And there was no break from on camera and off camera. It was just so natural. It was just amazing and absolute. And then when I had him read with Andy, and immediately I could see the spark between them,
Yeah.
And then another method I do as well is I give all of the actors a character history. So I give the history of the character from the time the character was born to when the movie starts. So they know everything about their character at the time we start filming, And then what I do is I sit them down and I interview them as they're in their characters, And I had Andy and the boy interviewed together already the chemistry. And then I knew these two are perfect together, amazing. And off camera, it wasn't, they weren't acting, like there was no break. They loved each other off camera as well as on camera. And they were joking on camera and off camera. It was so great. It was amazing to see. And Luke is just, yeah, I mean, he's so natural. He's just incredible young actor. Amazing.
When it works, unique. It works.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you and cinematographer Pierce McGrill decide on the film's aesthetics, specifically the use of neons in those nighttime scenes?
Oh yeah, well, neon was a big, I mean, I grew up on American movies, especially movies from the 70s. And one thing I always remember from movies from the 70s I know it seems real exotic and American to me, is that neon, I remember it even in black and white, it works. Even in Psycho, I remember that neon, that amazing shot that Hitchcock cuts to of the neon sign lighting up and the one in the rain as well in Psycho. Mm-hmm. And also in Taxi Driver, all those neon signs of the diners and stuff. And but not only that, I wanted those rich primary colors like you see in films from the 70s. So what we did was we used lenses, Panavision lenses from the 70s, and we put those on the Alexa camera. So it really brought out the colors, and then we brought out the colors even more in post as well, But another thing I wanted to do, I wanted this film to go from the structure of it, to go from a kind of Norman Rockwell view of America, like this seems perfect, this life they have. And then she descends into this Taxi Driver version of America, Mm-hmm. So it goes from upper middle class to the underclass, and it shows all sides of America, I think, That's where the neon came from, And we had hundreds and hundreds of these reference photographs that we found from different movies and stuff, And another thing me and Pierce do is we plan every single shot in the film. I mean, every shot you see in the film, there is nothing on the cutting room floor. That is the film that we shot.
Wow.
So if there's 2 shots in a film, they're the only 2 shots we shot, So wow. there is no, I mean, pretty much we're editing in the camera. But yeah, we planned it down to a T, It's just that neon. Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because that was a huge aspect for me. And it came up in the budget negotiations as well, because they wanted to cut it because the neon was so expensive. But I said, no, it's just, I've always imagined the neon signs in this film. It has to be that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got it in.
Yeah, it really stood out. It looked great. I noticed it right away. From that opening scene when the main character is driving down, I was like, okay, this looks cool.
Amazing. Thanks.
So this also leads right into my next question. Which films or directors have influenced you as a filmmaker, but also the film's son?
Oh, well, I mean, I suppose it's too many to count. My favorite directors are, I love Ingmar Bergman as my favorite director. I'm actually living in Sweden now. I'm not that far from where he used to live and work. And my wife is Swedish. And I love my favorite film. The film I've watched, I'm not saying it's the most perfect film in the world, but a film I've watched more than any others is Martin Scorsese's After Hours. I think it's a perfect movie. I learned so much from that. I must have watched it 300 times. I love that film so much. I learned everything about editing from that film. It's just amazing, the atmosphere. I love David Lynch as well. I love his movies. I particularly like Fire Walk with Me, the Twin Peaks movie he made. I love Pasolini as well, the Italian director. I mean, it's endless. But for Son, to be honest with you, I wasn't watching that many movies when I was writing it, because I was taking care of the baby. So if you probably know yourself, if you have a kid, if anyone has a kid, they know what it's like. You're just too exhausted to concentrate on anything,
Exactly.
So at the time I wasn't watching anything, but I'm sure the influences are 200 films from my entire life, but I can't pinpoint them for this film, really, Yeah.
So you've written and directed all of your films. Do you prefer the freedom of making your own work, or would you like to partner with someone in the future?
Well, for the first time, I'm writing an 8-part TV series. I'm just almost finished writing the outlines on the first 2 scripts.
Wow.
And for that, I've partnered up with a writer called Sally Tatchell on that. So that's for MGM. And then I've written a script called Vengeance with John Bassoff. He's a crime novelist. So these are the first two collaborators, writing-wise, I've ever worked with. And it's been great. They've been perfect. So I'm thinking maybe I should have done it before, you know. But yeah, I mean, if the right script came along, sure, I'd jump at the chance, you know. I'm offered scripts a lot, but nothing I'm that passionate about. After The Canal came out, my first horror film, I was offered a couple of really big films, and they went on to be pretty big. But I turned them down because I didn't really connect with them. But I'm always living in hope of that great script coming along by someone else, you know. But I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, cool. So this is your first film to take place in the United States. You are currently in Sweden.
The first film. No, it's the first film to be shot in the United States. But my previous one, Never Grow Old, was a Western, which was set in the United States, but it was actually shot in Ireland and Luxembourg, which is funny.
Yes, you are right. My bad. So it's your first film to be shot in the United States.
Yeah.
What made you want to shoot in the US?
Why? Well, it feels like all the times I've been here, it feels like it's so vast, you know. It feels like anything can happen there, you know. So no matter how fantastical the story, it doesn't feel out of place in America, you know. It feels like, whereas in Ireland, where I'm from, everything's really small, you know. It's everyone knows everyone else. So really, you can't. You just say you were making film about a werewolf in Ireland, well, you'd probably know the fella who was the werewolf because you know everyone there. But in America, you can get away with it because it's so vast, you know. It's just the possibilities just seem endless. And also, because I grew up on American movies, I kind of feel like I knew it before I visited it, you know. And it seems to me, and we shot in Mississippi, everywhere I turned the camera, it seemed like cinematic to me, you know, and exotic. So that's the reason, you know. There's endless possibilities there.
Yeah, I love that. So how did you figure out that horror was the genre you wanted to specialize in? Did you always know, or?
No, I mean, the first few films I made were family dramas, art house films, but they were. I made a film called The Fading Light, which got me noticed at festivals and stuff, and which was about a very personal film about a mother dying of cancer, and it was a little bit like Bergman's Cries and Whispers. It was very graphic, and there was elements of horror, but real life horror, you know. It was a very personal family film, you know, and the films I remember loving and one staying with me were mostly horror movies growing up, you know. I remember when I was 7 years old, I had a fever. And I woke up and I went down the stairs to my mother and father, and they were watching a movie, and it was the end of Rosemary's Baby. That scene where she looks in the crib and she says, "What have you done to his eyes?" And I was only 7 years old, but that shot of her putting her hand to her mouth and saying, "What have you done to it?" stayed with me my entire life, you know.
Yeah.
And when I started making films, I started to think, God, the power of cinema, the power of that horror movie, you know.
Yeah.
And me and my sister used to rent horror movies from my younger sister from the local video store, and I don't know, there were ones I always enjoyed, and I seem to have a feel for it, you know. And also, like I said earlier on, anything is possible with horror movies. You can be as subversive as you want. You can create a whole world, your whole universe dripping with atmosphere, and push sound design to its breaking point almost. It just seems endless possibilities, you know?
Yeah. Awesome. So my final question, and then I'll let you go. Can you please tell us what your you already told us about your series, but are you working on anything else? What should we be looking out for from you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a film just going out. I mentioned it earlier, but I'll tell you a bit more about it. It's a neo-noir called Vengeance with John Bassoff, the crime writer. And there's a lot of black comedy in it. It's very violent. Again, it's set in America. It's just gone out for financing. We just got word that a pretty big actor is interested. So I'm hoping that'll come together pretty quick. Nice. And then this is a TV series. And I've just finished a draft of a horror movie set in Ireland in the 17th century. And it's based on an actual case of witchcraft from the 17th century. So I'm looking forward to finishing that one.
Cool.
And a few other
Looking up
stuff
for
I'm
it.
mulling over as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, Ivan.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.